I was born in Shap, literally yards from the main A6 road, so the sound of the traffic has been part of my life right from as long as I can remember. I still live in the house where I was born, not in the very bad winter of 1947, but towards the end of the same year. But the 1950s, when I started school, just across the road here, it was Shap Girls and Infants School, and there used to be a militia beacon and a crossing there because the boys' school was the opposite side of the road, and there used to be cross-travelling with the children. I think it would probably be about 1954 or 5 when they brought the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit in, and of course there went the militia beacons and the zebra crossing, and of course then it became a greater problem to cross the road. All the major towns in Scotland, the major cities, had holiday fortnights. Glasgow and Clydebank and Edinburgh, Dundee, Aberdeen. And as one lot came down for a fortnight, they went to all these Lancashire resorts, Morecambe and Blackpool. And then a fortnight later, as they were coming back, another lot would be coming down, so you'd have two-way solid traffic. And it was nothing to wait 20 minutes to get across the road. But that was always one weekend when they had the village rose fete, which included a procession with a pipe band and floats, and it sort of caused a complete snarl up. But the collecting buckets were always full.
The system was that the drivers would, I suppose, head for Shap has been a reasonable place where they could park up easily, and there was quite a lot of industry in providing accommodation for lorry drivers. In fact, it was probably almost the prime occupation of people who had a fairly large house. The lorries themselves were parked up on the Memorial Hall and school fronts. Of course, I was only a little boy at the school, and when they started, particularly during the winter months, sometimes they had great difficulty in starting. There were fires and goodness knows what to as it were, decongeal the diesel, and the classroom, well, the whole school would fill up with diesel fumes, and it was absolutely impossible to see across the classrooms for this blue haze.
Shap village itself has grown up because of the road. I mean, there was a Shap village here centuries ago in medieval times related to the Shap Abbey and so on and so forth. So it has an ancient history. It's not just a ribbon development along a road which is no longer important. Shap is a long straggling village, but it's full of cheerful, friendly, helpful and hospitable people still. I mean, which harks back, I think, to those days of the original road. I think you must remember that when the A6 was an artery and all traffic was going in this constant stream against each other, it included all public and commercial transport and private transport as well. Of course, there weren't so many cars, there weren't so many motorbikes. Punctuated along the length of the A6 were a series of transport cafes, and of course, because the wagons travelled much slower in those days, and the heat in the cab was so oppressive often that you had to stop to let the whole thing cool down, wagon drivers tended by and large to use these transport cafes much more than they are perhaps used today, where they might make one stop, say, between Manchester and Glasgow. In those days, they would make 3 or maybe 4 stops overnight. Cup of tea, break from the driving, from the heat of the cab and so on.
There was a transport cafe actually in the village, opposite the Memorial Hall, and it had a fair bit of parking behind it for quite a number of wagons. During the bad winters, of course, when it got blocked